Hello, and this is our video lecture. This chapter that we're covering, the Presidency, Chapter 7. The picture here are the Trumps on Inauguration Day. Our to-do list, Chapter 7, class notes, key text points, essay questions. We have a discussion board 7 and assignment number 6. Here's our learning objectives for this chapter. Here's some of the other learning objectives. So our essay is on first spouse. Based upon the roles of Hillary Clinton, Laura Bush, and Michelle Obama, what do you think Melanie Trump will do as first spouse? We'll talk a little bit more about that in class. Discussion board number 7, do you think there'll be a Madam Presidency in our lifetime? Hillary Clinton came close. And then assignment number 6 is on the presidency, and it's all about that man right there, and you'll try to find it. So here we go. Presidential bill signing. Here is President Trump signing his very first bill on Inauguration Day. And there is something called a signing statement that goes with it. And a signing statement is something that the president uses to clarify in a bill. And in the study guide question, according to the text, what did President Bush use the signing statement to do? Well, it threatened the separation of powers. He didn't just sign the bill, he signed the bill and then wrote things about it. I think executive orders fall under that same purview, that people think they threaten the separation of powers between the branches. The double expectation gaps, presidential promises versus the power of the office. Lots of promises made, but can the president actually do it? And the other is head of state versus head of government. So number 17, head of state. What is the difference between the president's role as head of state and head of government? So the head of government is the political role the president plays as the party leader, and he can also run the government. So, for example, Donald Trump drew an executive order on freezing the federal hiring of federal personnel. That's a good example of being head of government. Head of state is the unifying role that the president plays as the leader of this nation. So that's often in foreign affairs. So a good example of that would be hosting a state dinner or visiting a country abroad. That would be more of the head of state, representing the entire US. Qualifications chosen by the Electoral College, limited to 2 4-year terms per the 22nd Amendment after Franklin Roosevelt was elected 4 times. Has to be a natural born citizen, a resident for 14 years, and at least 35 years of age. Vice president succeeds in the event of death or disability or resignation. We've done 2 amendments about that. And removal from the office by the House, who impeaches, and the Senate convicts. And Study Guide 18 asks, what is impeachment process intended to remove a sitting president for? And the answer in the Constitution is clear and not clear at the same time. Treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. So it's very clear about what, but the definition of those words are pretty vague. What's a high crime? So we've had a few presidents have been impeached and one actually convicted. Oh, I did want to look at 270 to win on the Electoral College. As you can see here, Donald Trump winning the Electoral College. This is not a surprise to you. It was a surprise on Election Day. Ohio and several key states went to Donald Trump. And here's the key part about it. Madam Clinton had 65.8 million votes. President Trump had 62.9. So basically, there's almost a 3 million vote difference. But if you look at the 13 swing states, they were pretty consistent Trump states. So the Electoral College is about winning big and swing states. It's not necessarily about getting more votes than the other person. Some constitutional powers, the executive powers, as we call them: chief administrator, head of federal agencies responsible for the implementation of national policy. An example, Donald Trump, in his one of his very few days of office, had resignations on several key people. It's very common, by the way, when a president turns over, everybody submits a letter of resignation. He accepted some of them, I think, was a bit of the surprise. Cabinet members, number 19. What is the president's cabinet comprised of? Well, cabinet means officially the 15 department heads, the appointees of the 15 department heads. There are some other people that sit in the president cabinet meetings in kind of the edges of the room, but the cabinet itself are the 15 department heads: Department of State, Treasury, Defense, etc. Commander in Chief, the top officer of the country's military establishment. That is the role. He is our chief officer, a civilian who runs the military. Foreign policy maker, he negotiates treaties, makes executive agreements with other countries. And there was a lot of talk during the election. We'll see how it goes on renegotiating trade deals like NAFTA. Other constitutional powers, the State of the Union Address. The State of the Union Address is one of several legislative powers listed in Article 2, Section 3. So the president is required by the Constitution to update Congress, quote, from time to time, unquote, which there's a specific time for that. So he does that once a year. He can also explain law, that's executive order. He can also, it's called faithfully execute the law. So the president has a little bit of power in Article 2, Section 3. The presidential veto. So the president can refuse to sign a law or simply not return it to Congress. So if you don't return a bill to Congress, it automatically becomes law, except if Congress adjourned, and that's called a pocket veto. So the president does have the authority to reject a bill, either by not signing it or just by putting it in his pocket. The question is, how frequently is Congress successful at overriding a presidential veto? And oh my gosh, not very good. It says, I think the text actually says, Congress is generally unsuccessful. Well, generally unsuccessful, here's the numbers: 111 have been successfully overridden out of 2,572. So that is less than 5% of all vetoes have been overridden. Executive orders number 22, these are quote unquote clarification, close quote, of congressional policy. So that really, that clarification is often seen as writing law. I know I was literally sitting in a vehicle driving on the interstate when President Nixon came on the radio and informed me that the new speed limit across the country is 55 miles an hour. I thought, oh my gosh, somebody's going to arrest me in the next 5 seconds. Signing statements I've already talked about before. Constitutional powers under the judicial side, the president nominates federal justices to the Supreme Court. Very controversial. You don't get very many of them since the justices sit for life. The Senate does need to confirm them. Pardoning powers, release or excuse from prison for legal penalties. President Obama, very typical in the last days of office, often does pardons. So that goes with it. By the that can sometimes be seen as both a good and a bad thing. Solicitor General, selected by the President, argues the government cases before the Supreme Court. So the Attorney General is the person responsible for carrying out law enforcement. Solicitor General is the person the President picks to argue cases before the Supreme Court. The evolution of the president's, well, it was really a very limited power, except for Abraham Lincoln, possibly in the Civil War, and then Woodrow Wilson, World War I. But during the Depression, the federal government assumed incredible responsibility that once that door opened, we've never gone back on it. So the test question number 25, inherent powers. What are inherent powers? Those are the powers not explicitly stated in the Constitution. For example, there's clear Abraham Lincoln did some things during the Civil War blatantly unconstitutional, but he said he needed to do them to preserve the Union. There would be no Union. And he took an oath of office to uphold the Union, to preserve the Union. So he said he could do anything he needed to when facing extinction. Presidential, the power struggle, the power to persuade. So the power to persuade, number 26, please define power to persuade. It's the president's ability to convince Congress, other political actors, governors, other people, and the general public to cooperate, go along with the administration's, the president's legislative agenda. So it's President Reagan was good at this. He'd go to the public directly and get them to pressure Congress. That was a good way to kind of do it. Working with Congress, better success when the party controls Congress. So the current situation with Donald Trump and a Republican Congress, both Senate and House, is rare, frankly, in the modern era. Usually is some divided. So why is it hard? Divided government. The question is number 28. What is the major reason that presidents are not as successful in dividing government? Well, the answer is that Republicans and Democrats, they really agree on the problems that we have. Oh, we really need to get to healthcare. We really need to get to Social Security. What they disagree on and disagree vehemently is on the approach to take and therefore the solutions to solve it. So since they approach the problem so differently, divided government often stalemates, and hence you talk about Washington gridlock. Senatorial courtesy, number 24. What is the definition of senatorial courtesy? So that's when the president is going to nominate someone from a senator's home state. So this is typically a federal judiciary nominee. And so in the state of Ohio, that would be Republican Rob Portman. So since the president is Republican and Rob Portman is Republican, it is senatorial courtesy for President Trump to consult with, and in fact, if Rob Portman says no, 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 to take a name out that would be nominated for a federal judge. It is the same senatorial courtesy that the Democratic senator received when President Obama was in office. So that's senatorial courtesy. The cycle effect, number 27, what is the definition? As you can see, that all presidents have cycles up, down, up, down. Now you look, Lyndon Johnson started very high after JFK's assassination, and it kept going down. There's the Vietnam War there. Nixon did really well till Watergate 72, that it went down. But for the most part, look at Reagan, up, down, up, down. Bush did pretty well till we had a recession, then it slid down. Clinton, up, down, up, down. Bush, up, and then down after post 11. Obama, up, down. As it goes along. Now, Trump started in a pretty low position, so we'll see what that cycle effect is. So, this is the predictable shift in the popularity of a president over the course of their term. So, here's the organization of the president and managing the presidential establishment, the cabinet. I've already talked about them, the 15 heads. There's also the executive office of the president, EOP, designed to serve the president's interests. So these are more personal appointments. And the White House, the chief of staff. Now, that is the inner circle of the White House. So if you look at it, the inner circle of the White House office, and then next, other people that do things for the president. And then lastly, the cabinet. Sometimes they're not very close to the president. Sometimes they're picks for political purposes. Managing the president, the vice president, often chosen for a balance ticket. I think that was very true in this case. Someone who, in the balance in this case, was someone who is a traditional Republican, very conservative, but a traditional Republican. And then first spouse, number 30. And so I think the question is, what is the role of the first spouse? Well, the constitutional role of the first spouse is nothing. There's no role for the first spouse, not written, no words in the Constitution. So that role has been slowly defined over time, and they've ranged from some very traditional roles to occasionally very political roles. But for the most part, you can see the video here in Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign, which is all about getting people to do 60 minutes of activity every day, children in particular, to fight childhood obesity. When Clinton, Ms. Clinton, Hillary Clinton was First Lady. She was very interested in healthcare and healthcare, particularly of children. And so each of the First Ladies typically picks something that we all can agree on, something that is not as politically controversial. Now, frankly, it was Madam Clinton when she was First Lady Clinton who picked healthcare, and that was controversial, still is today. But aside from that, I think the rest of them have been pretty kind of straightforward. So we'll see what First Lady Trump will take up as her advocacy. Presidential character. So that's a little bit about the character and personality. There's a lot written about presidential character and how to look into it and kind of see something, and a lot written recently about President Trump, kind of the new, very direct, very kind of abrupt and abrasive, but very connected to many Americans. So we'll see how that works. Presidential style is the image projected by the president, how he would like to be perceived at home and abroad. And there are people that advise the president all the time on their style and kind of how to do things. Here's a comparison of the public's image of Clinton, Bush, and Obama, for example. Citizens check. Well, clearly, there's a reelection. If you want to get reelected, you can always stop legislation. In the mid-year election, 2 years in, then you can see a big swing, and the other party could take over the legislature. You'd have divided government. That's all I've got on this particular one. I've covered the discussion board, the essay question, the assignment for this one about the picture of a person there, and you'll have to figure out who that is and a little bit about him. So I hope this is helpful to you as we've now covered Chapter 7 on the presidency.